Hey guys, and welcome back to my series on work sampling online. This is going to be our third video. In the past video, we talked about the three major components of WSO, the performance indicators, the checklists, and the narrative summary reports. This time, we're going to go into a little more detail about your observational skills and how to put those to use when you're collecting evidence on your children. For this video, we're going to go over 5 major points. First, we'll go over the definition of an observation to make sure we're all on the same page. Next, we're going to talk about what we can learn from those observations. Third, we're going to talk about why it's important to take those observations. Fourth, we'll go over the reasons for recording observations. And lastly, we'll talk about differentiating between fact and interpretation. All right, let's get started with the definition. So what is an observation? Observation is defined as watching or regarding with attention or purpose in order to see or learn something. Observation allows teachers to learn about children by carefully watching them, listening to them, and studying their work. Here are some ways that we can observe students to learn more about them. We can ask them questions that encourage students to describe their thinking. We can listen to them as they describe how they make decisions and solve problems. We can watch them as they play and work with materials and other children. And we can listen as they talk with others informally and during group discussion. So, what can we learn from these observations? Our students tell us a great deal about themselves through their actions and language. They tell us who they are, they tell us what they know, and how they think. Through careful observation over time, we can learn about children's strengths and difficulties. These observations can reveal not only what they know, but how they came to know it, their processes of thinking and learning. Observation helps us answer questions we have about our students, such as, how does each student approach a task? How does each child use language to express their thinking? What is a child's typical method of expression? Is it drama, drawing, verbal language, body language? How does this child use materials? How does our student engage in social tasks with others? Answering these questions is easy through classroom-based observation. Now let's talk about why classroom-based observation is so important. Observational assessment gives a representative and complete view of a student because it is classroom-based and ongoing. Because classroom observation occurs in a context that is familiar and comfortable for the child, teachers are likely to acquire an accurate picture of this child as a learner. Children's behavior is not influenced by test anxiety or misrepresented because the child misunderstands the directions to a task, as can happen with other types of assessment. The information teachers collect from observation reveals not only whether or not the child solved a problem correctly, but also illustrates the manner in which the child approached the task and solved the problem. Observation is also a valid form of assessment. It provides us with repeated opportunities to witness students practice skills, demonstrate knowledge, and exhibit behaviors in real learning activities. Here's an example. One day, you might take a picture of a student's structure in the block center. And on another day, you might take a quick sketch of the student's pattern block design in the math center. And on a third occasion, you might save a collage the student made in the art center by gluing together shapes. When it comes time to evaluate the student's sense of progress and performance, your judgment about this student's sense of balance and symmetry will be based on these observations as well as many others that you've taken, instead of just a single example of this student's work. Now that we've talked about why observations are important, now let's talk about our reasons for recording observations. First, records help us remember and keep track of what children know and can do. Second, documented observations provide the evidence to support evaluations of children. Third, observations recorded over time enable teachers to see patterns in children's behavior and their approaches to learning. These patterns are often evident only when teachers reflect on collections of observational notes. Finally, records of observations will help teachers plan instructional activities that are responsive to children's interests, strengths, and needs. Now that we've talked about our reasons for observation, now let's go over differentiating between fact and interpretation. In order for us to document observations effectively, we have to be able to differentiate between what is actually seen and heard and what is our opinion or interpretation of the student's actions. We need to use language that describes the actions of children at work and play. This is much more informative than words that convey judgment. Consider these two examples. Jeremy is scattered and too distracted to do his work. In the second example, it says, Jeremy has worked in the math center for 15 minutes, completed 2 out of 8 hexagons in the hexagon game, built a stack of shapes with the pattern blocks, talks continually with others about baseball, walked to and from the pencil sharpener and the water fountain many times. Although both records convey that Jeremy is not actually completing his math work, the first gives only the teacher's impressions. The second record describes Jeremy's actions and provides enough detailed information to explain why he is not completing his work. It allows the teacher to ask questions about how to support Jeremy's success as a learner. Is Jeremy distracted? Is his interest in baseball absorbing his attention? Would it help to engage Jeremy's interest by relating the math problems to baseball? Would he be more successful if he could work collaboratively on the problems with others? Questions and interpretations or impressions can be included in the documentation of an observation, but should be clearly identified as such. Some teachers divide their records into 2 parts. On one side, they write observations. On the other side, they note questions, concerns, and interpretations of behavior. This concludes our 5 points on observation. In the next video, we're going to be talking more about investigating and preparing observation methods and tools. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, or if you have something you want to hear about specifically, leave me a comment. I'll make sure we talk about it in a future video. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. See you next time.